When we think of icons, we think of symbols that represent more than themselves. They embody a feeling, a movement, a moment in time. Yet few figures shine as brightly and controversially as Elvis Presley. Known simply as the King, Elvis isn't just a name. He's a cultural phenomenon that still sends shivers down spines and stirs deep emotions decades after his death. But here's a shock. Elvis started life not as a superstar, but as a poor boy in a tiny Mississippi town, with a mother who feared losing him and a father who couldn't even afford basic fees. Born on January 8, 1935, Elvis Aaron Presley came into the world not as a rock icon but as a fragile baby, sharing a birth with his stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garon. His early life was a struggle. His family, the Presleys, were barely scraping by. His dad, Vernon, often worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet. There were times when the family was evicted from their home and had to rely on public relief. This poverty wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. Living in a world where everyone around them seemed to have more, the young Elvis learned early on what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. School was no easier. Elvis was a loner, often picked on for his ragged clothes and longer hair. Kids would whisper behind his back, calling him names. His mother, Gladys, tried everything to shield him from the harshness of the world. She encouraged his love for music, buying him his first guitar, but she also kept him close, fearful of losing him as she had nearly lost his twin. This closeness forged a bond that would shape Elvis's future, making him both deeply protective of his family and intensely alone. As Elvis grew older, the cracks in his family's life became more visible. His parents' marriage faltered, and Vernon's absences grew longer. The pressure of fame would later test Elvis's relationships, but his roots in poverty and family strife remained a defining part of who he was. Despite the hardships, Gladys instilled in him a sense of self-worth. She told him often that he was special, a belief that Elvis carried with him as he ventured into the world beyond Tupelo. Music became Elvis's escape, his voice a powerful tool to connect with something bigger than himself. His early influences were country and gospel, genres deeply rooted in the Southern experience. But it was when he stumbled upon rock and roll that Elvis found his true voice. This new sound was raw, rebellious, and it resonated with a generation looking for freedom. Elvis became a bridge between the old and the new, a symbol of youthful defiance against the status quo. As he rose to fame, Elvis faced criticism and adoration in equal measure. Some saw him as a shameless showman, while others hailed him as a revolutionary. He was too sexy, yet he also carried the weight of a nation's dreams on his shoulders. His music wasn't just entertainment, it was a reflection of the tumultuous times he lived in. Elvis's ability to blend genres country, rhythm and blues, gospel showed a versatility that few could match, but it also made him a target for those who feared his influence. In many ways, Elvis's life was a paradox. He rose from poverty to unimaginable wealth, yet the loneliness of his childhood never truly left him. The fame that brought him adoration also brought isolation. He was a man who could light up a stage but struggled with intimacy. His fears and insecurities, rooted in his early years, followed him throughout his life. Elvis Presley's journey from a poor boy in Tupelo to the king of rock and roll is a tale of resilience and contradiction. His legacy isn't just in the music, it's in the complex, often painful human story behind the star. As we look back, we see not just the king, but a man who embodied the struggles and dreams of an entire generation. His story is a reminder that behind every icon, there's a person with a heart full of hopes and fears just like ours. Elvis Presley's early life was marked by a mix of love and struggle, shaped by his family dynamics and the challenging environment they lived in. Born to Vernon and Gladys Presley, Elvis grew up in a world where music would become his escape and ultimately his path to fame. His parents, though well-intentioned, had very different traits that impacted young Elvis in profound ways. Gladys Presley was a force to be reckoned with. She was strong-willed and determined, especially after losing her father at a young age and having to support her family by working long hours in a garment factory. Her love for music and dancing was infectious, and she doted on Elvis, often shielding him from the harsh realities of their life. However, her affection was sometimes overly possessive, creating an environment where Elvis had to navigate between his mother's intense care and his father's absence. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, was a contrast to Gladys. Described as handsome but lacking ambition, Vernon struggled with job stability and addiction. His time in jail for a brief stint only added to the family's turmoil. The strain on his relationship with Gladys grew as Vernon found it increasingly difficult to secure work after his release. This instability meant frequent moves, which added to the uncertainty in Elvis's young life. Despite these challenges, Elvis found solace and expression through music. His passion for singing was evident from a young age, even making appearances on local radio shows. Charlie Boren, who ran the radio station, remembered how frequently and determinedly Elvis would show up, clearly driven by a deep love for music. This early exposure and encouragement from local figures like Boren played a crucial role in nurturing Elvis's talent. Music wasn't just a hobby for Elvis, it was his way to stand out and find confidence. At school, he often faced ridicule for his humble background, which only made Gladys more protective. She once confronted bullies with a broom, showing the lengths she'd go to defend her son. Elvis, however, learned to use music as his shield and his sword. Even at school, he found opportunities to sing, dreaming big despite the mockery from some classmates. Elvis's desire for independence and recognition led him to save money for a guitar, overriding his initial wish for a bicycle. Gladys saw the potential in music and supported his choice, even helping to buy the guitar. This instrument became his companion, helping him express emotions and dreams that words alone couldn't capture. However, his desire to own a rifle, a symbol of manhood, was met with disapproval from Gladys, highlighting the clash between his aspirations and her protective instincts. Despite the pushback, Elvis's individuality began to shine through. His unique style, often wearing pink shirts and black pants along with his long, carefully styled hair, set him apart from his peers. This distinct appearance was noticed by Dixie Locke, one of his girlfriends at the time, who recognized he was not like other boys. His confidence in his musical abilities, even facing ridicule, showed a burgeoning self-assurance that would define his future. Elvis's friendship with Bobby "Red" West illustrates another layer of his character. Red, who later became a friend and bodyguard, noted Elvis's intense nature, especially when it came to proving himself, not just to others but most importantly to himself. This drive was evident even in his sports endeavors, where he faced rejection when the football coach demanded he cut his hair, a symbol of his individuality. Red stepped in, showing that while Elvis respected his friends, he also had a strong sense of self that he wouldn't compromise. Through it all, Elvis's hyperactive energy was a defining trait. Cousin Harold Lloyd remembered how Elvis would play so hard he'd exhaust himself, showing a youthful exuberance that was both endearing and exhausting to those around him. This energy, combined with his musical talent and growing sense of self, laid the foundation for the iconic figure Elvis Presley would become. In those formative years, Elvis was more than just a boy from a troubled home. He was a young man finding his voice both literally and metaphorically. His music was his way to connect with the world, to express the complex emotions and experiences of his life. As he navigated the challenges of his early years, Elvis was crafting not just a career, but a legacy that would resonate far beyond his hometown. In the early days, Elvis Presley and his family faced tough times. They moved to Memphis to be closer to relatives, but ended up in a tiny house with 7 people sharing just one bathroom. Finding jobs was hard, and Gladys, Elvis's mom, felt really ashamed when they had to go on welfare. Welfare is money the government gives to people who can't work. Elvis's dad, Vernon, worked hard to provide. When Vernon found a job, Elvis stopped going to school full-time. His grades weren't great to start with, and he often fell asleep in class. His counselor talked to his parents, saying Elvis had to choose between work and school. Elvis and Gladys chose school, and Elvis managed to graduate high school, something no other Presley had done before. Music was Elvis's escape. He entered singing contests, even if he didn't always win. It wasn't just about being the best, it was about keeping at it. One man who knew Elvis well said, "Others had talent, looks, charisma, but Elvis didn't give up." Elvis's dad, Vernon, wasn't happy about Elvis's love for music. He told Elvis it would ruin him, but Elvis was determined. Meanwhile, Elvis had other passions too, like girls, especially younger ones. When he was 19, he started dating a 14-year-old, which caused problems. Music was Elvis's true calling. Even when he had other jobs, like driving a truck or working in a factory, he kept singing and dreaming of a music career. He worked various jobs because he needed money, but music was what truly mattered to him. As Elvis's fame grew, his family struggled. His dad, Vernon, wasn't ambitious until Elvis became successful. Elvis's mom, Gladys, tried to support him but found it hard as his popularity soared. She felt she couldn't control the situation and sometimes turned to food and drink to cope. Elvis's parents both struggled with alcohol, something not often talked about in his story. His girlfriend Dixie said it was hard to share Elvis as his fame grew. Elvis himself broke free from commitment, believing monogamy was for women. He had many relationships, especially with younger women, when he was on the road. Despite the criticism and derision, Elvis's fans adored him. He faced rejection at first, even from his own genre, country music. They thought he warped their music, but later, when artists like Olivia Newton-John tried to claim country music, they faced similar rejections. Elvis learned from other singers like Al Jolson and Johnny Ray, who were pioneers in being expressive on stage. Johnny Ray, often seen as a big influence on rock and roll, was actually a key figure Elvis looked up to. However, as Elvis became more popular, he had to tone down his stage antics to fit into mainstream acceptance. Elvis's journey was not without its hurdles. Even a famous singer like Tony Bennett acknowledged that Elvis faced disapproval for his style. Kurt Cobain, another musician, noted that anyone in show business can't stay too controversial forever. Elvis understood this and learned to adapt his act as he climbed the music charts. In the end, Elvis Presley became a legend, a mix of influences and raw talent. From a boy who struggled in school to a star who changed music forever, Elvis's story shows the power of determination and the challenges of fame. His life was full of ups and downs, but his music lived on, reminding us of the boy from Tupelo who dared to dream big.